Welcome to another episode of Biz Money Talks with Tracey Bissett. I am your host, Tracey, a money coach for entrepreneurs, and it's really my privilege to work with business owners to help them understand their financial statements, their cash flow cycles, make sure they're pricing profitably, and navigate those challenging stakeholder conversations that are all about money. We are in October. We are celebrating Small Business Month. So I hope you are taking the time to celebrate yourself, think about all your success over the year, and also what you want to be doing differently as we move ahead. And we have someone to help us here today to talk about our businesses. So Bryan Gelman, welcome to the show.
Hi there. How are you, Tracey? Thanks for having me.
I'm great. And so Bryan is a licensed insolvency trustee. He is the co-founder of Albert Gelman Inc. And the focus of his practice is on insolvency and restructuring for small to medium-sized operated businesses and individuals who really need assistance with their financial affairs. Bryan gets very involved with accountants, tax practitioners, and other legal professionals to help them in understanding the value that the firm can provide and really give their clients kind of fulsome service as they are navigating their debt levels. So super excited Bryan's here. It's a very timely topic. And while I know some people might be a little bit nervous about talking with an insolvency trustee, we want to break down some of those myths and barriers and to talk about how they can be your friends and really help businesses come out through challenging times on the other side. So I've shared your formal bio, Bryan. Love if you can share just a little bit more about your background and kind of what a day in your life looks like.
Okay. So my background is I have a university degree from Western Ontario, and then I started articling to become a trustee. That took me 7 years to do. And once I got licensed, I worked for a company for 10 years and then started this business about 11 years ago. A day in my life is I am dealing with, I deal hands-on with clients. We have a team of people that deal with individuals, individuals with credit card debt and lines of credit. We deal with individuals and companies that owe money to the government, like HST and corporate tax and personal income tax and all of that stuff. And then we have a group that deals with quite complicated situations. Businesses that, small businesses that could be restaurants or whoever they are, where the bank is putting pressure on them and they don't know what to do, or larger businesses like construction companies doing 25 or 30 million in sales, where there's changes in the business and they need to lay employees off and move, and the bank's putting pressure on them, all that. And a day in my life is just working out the solution where the average person or business owner either wants to shut down and that's their goal, or they don't want to shut down, but people are putting pressure on them to pay. And my job is to basically work out a plan for them as to how they can shut down or how they can tell their creditors to just back off a bit, give them some time to work out their affairs, and this way make everybody better as opposed to them going out of business. So it's to come up with that solution. So that's what I do.
Excellent. And I think it's so important that we have this conversation because number one, business owners need to recognize when things are not going well. And I'm a huge proponent of business owners knowing their numbers. So when that happens, we've got to ask for help, whether it's from an education standpoint or we've really got to make some changes in the business because things are not going to continue to be viable if they go on the current trend. And turning to someone trusted like yourself can help kind of navigate the way and kind of make things perfectly clear about what are the actual legitimate options and how can we go about this in a really logical, methodical way. And so you've talked a little bit about your services that the firm provides overall. When it comes to business owners, what should they know about the different sorts of solutions that are out there? I'm sure some people have heard of companies going bankrupt and different things around restructuring. So what are some of the things kind of across the spectrum that you might help the business owners with?
So, in most cases, I think what I can tell business owners is this. If you have a core product that, and remember, I really haven't seen these questions, so I'm just shooting off the cuff here. But
Absolutely.
the reality is that if you have a core product that makes money, there's a lot of different elements in the business that can change. You can grow too quick and your revenue hasn't caught up, or you can have something unfavorable in the business happen and you don't have enough revenue to deal with it. But as long as you have core revenue that you can make a profit off of, we can fix that. So if you've expanded too quickly and you need to lay off employees and you need to move, that costs money. But if you have to go bankrupt, everybody loses. You lose, and the creditors that you owe money to lose. So if you've got a core service or product that makes money, we can restructure the business in order to help you with the debt and help you with the changes that need to happen. That's really what it comes down to. So for business owners, you have to understand that, like, if you don't have a core product or core service and your revenue is just really low, it might not work. But if you've got something there, then it probably will work and rational heads prevail. The challenging part is that sometimes you need statutory help, like legal. I'm not saying you need a lawyer necessarily, but you need to use a statute that will allow you to deal with many different parties, like landlords, creditors, employees. And this could even be for a small business. So that's why you would invoke a trustee. And I'm not sales pitching. If there's a way for you to not use my services, trust me, I will be the first to tell you this isn't for you. Go see this lawyer. You just need to tweak this little thing. Or go see this financial person to work on a cash flow, but you'll be fine. The only reason you'd use a trustee is if you've got a lot of debt, you don't know how to manage it, or if you foresee having a lot of debt. Like if you know you're going to have to lay off 20 employees and you can't handle that debt that arises from that, you've got to start planning for that. And a lawyer typically won't know how. They understand the legal remedies, but not the business issues. So that's really where I come in. And that's the tip I can give.
And when they're engaging you as an insolvency trustee, who is your obligation to, and what are you bound by, just for people who might not understand what a trustee does?
So really at the beginning of any engagement that I take for a business owner, let's say, it's always as a consultant, because it's like going in for heart surgery. You don't go to your doctor day one for the surgery. You go in, you have the discussion, you take the tests. All that is like due diligence. So for me, I become a consultant. I get all the data and all the reporting, and I speak to management and I figure out what the problems are. And then once we have a plan, then we execute on it. So at first it's a consultant, and my role and my duty is to the client. And then after that, my duty, it depends on what the arrangement is, but I'm an officer of the court, and I owe a duty to the creditors, I owe a duty to the client, I owe a duty to the court, because I have to administer a plan, either a bankruptcy or a proposal, which is a technical word for restructuring, where you just reduce debt. So that's in the business context. Sometimes
we can keep it there in the business context. I think we won't go into the personal world today.
No, I think for the business context, that's the way it goes. I got to be a consultant first to figure it out, and then create the plan, and then executing the plan is where a more formal role comes into play.
Okay, excellent. And so certainly the last 18 months, getting on 20 months, have been unprecedented.
Yeah, it's been crazy.
And when we were heading into that, we certainly saw some companies were doing really well. Some were already struggling. And if we think about February 2020, we came through first couple of months challenging, then the government turned on the tap and lots of money came, and different companies and industries fared at different levels. What are you seeing right now with the clients who are coming to talk with you? What's going on in Canada, and what do you think might happen in the next few months, or even as we get into early 2022?
Okay, so what's happened in Canada is unprecedented. In other words, exactly the opposite of what everybody thought. Insolvencies are at a 25-year low, meaning that people or businesses that have gone, bankrupt or filed some kind of restructuring, they're lower than they have been in a very long time. And what that doesn't mean is how many businesses close their doors. What it means is how many actually filed. So in many, many cases, restaurants that have closed just haven't gone bankrupt and haven't filed anything formal with a trustee. So the numbers are low, which is exactly what we weren't expecting. Furthermore, any businesses that were suffering, the government has plunged all of this money into wage subsidies. And I can tell you from experience that I have several clients that have been on the edge, and I do a lot of work for banks where the banks put me in to talk to the clients to figure out what's happening. And if not for the wage subsidies, they would have been dead, just dead in the water. So as much as people pick on the government, the wage subsidies have certainly kept many, many, many businesses afloat. So I think that, my sense about the future is this. Once the subsidies stop, I think there will be certain businesses that just aren't ready for that change. Mm-hmm. They're relying too heavily on it, and they haven't necessarily made the changes. So once that stops, cash flow might come to a grinding halt for certain businesses like restaurants, and that could substantially impact their ability to be viable. So having a discussion with me now, as an example, or with Tracey about, what if my cash flow dries up? What if the subsidies end? What changes can we maybe think about? So as an example, employees, if you terminate them, they get termination pay. And if they're large enough, they get severance pay. And companies are liable for that. So one thing to do now, if you foresee yourself having financial trouble in the future, is terminate employees and give them working notice. Give them working notice while you're collecting CERB or whatever it is to pay them. Don't wait until the tap gets turned off. So if you give them that working notice, at least maybe if they're entitled to 4 weeks working notice, maybe you'll be entitled to the subsidy to use it for that, as opposed to waiting for the taps to turn off and then asking yourself, okay, how am I going to fund all these layoffs? It's too late. So I think you can use the government subsidies to help,
cushion the blow of what's going to happen.
Yeah. You don't want to wait till my suggestion is you don't need to call me for that. That would be a call Tracey question about how to manage employee terminations and costs, where you can use some of that government money for that purpose.
Absolutely. So if people are looking ahead and they see that things look very uncertain and they're feeling very apprehensive and they are carrying a lot of debt, what are some success tips that you have for them, either in terms of best time to call you, how to work with you in terms of what they might need to provide, or anything else that you see when the relationship goes really smoothly and the most successful outcomes can be obtained?
Yeah. Okay. So number one, get your bookkeepers in and get your books up to date. I have too many clients who call me and I'm trying to give them advice and their books are a year behind. I mean, I can manage with that, but it's very helpful to have current records. Mm-hmm. So get your bookkeepers in and get your books up to date.
But plus it's hard to quantify a problem if you don't have the books up to date.
Yeah, exactly. On the flip side, if your problem is $1 million or 10 million and you don't have that much money, sometimes it doesn't matter how big it is. The reality is, more times than not, get your books up to date. Okay. It also helps to quantify government liabilities, mm-hmm. which flows down to directors, and that does matter whether it's 100,000 or 10 million or whatever the amount is. So, to your point, just get your numbers up to date. Number two, get advice while you have money in the bank. Professionals need to be paid. That most people know that, and you can use the company's money to pay for advice, as opposed to when you run out of money and then somebody like me says you've got to front the money personally. That's not good. You'd rather use the company's money to get this advice. So, it seems a little bit self-serving, but the reality is that you get good advice when people are well retained and you've got the money to pay them. Yeah. I think the other thing that you can do is just be proactive. I mean, that sounds beautiful and perfect in a perfect world, but most people are scared. Yes. And when you're scared, you can't be proactive because you're terrified.
Yeah.
So the reality of that is this: you're terrified because you don't know answers to your questions. But once you get answers, you probably won't be as terrified, because I've seen every industry really, and I've seen every different situation. And I mean, sure, there's some that are new, but my point is, most people, after they talk with me, they have a huge sigh of relief that there is a plan. So you got to get over the hump of being terrified and scared out of your mind, make the phone call, and then understand that there's options, and hopefully sleep better.
Yeah,
And then your
absolutely.
mind starts thinking better.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've witnessed it too. Like I've seen just from talking to people, you see the weight almost physically lift off their shoulder and they're
Yeah.
visibly less strained. And now instead of being paralyzed in a holding pattern of, oh my gosh, this is horrible, it's okay, this is how horrible it is. And here's now what we can do and actually start on the steps to make the change.
Agree.
Excellent. Okay, so you've heard that, folks. Get your books up to date. Get advice when you have money in the bank so that it's not going to be coming out of your personal account. And then you may have, when you're doing that, you're also being proactive because your money hasn't run out. So you can actually start to implement the changes. And then your third one, just really be proactive, which is so important. Now, I'm sure you've seen some missteps as well, and people coming to you kind of at the 11th hour and all kinds of things going on. What are some of those missteps you'd love people to avoid in their businesses when they're carrying a lot of debt? If you had a magic wand and you could help them not make them.
Okay, so a couple things. When you're dealing with creditors, those are people or businesses that your company owes money to. Let's say the bank. Okay? Don't hide from the bank. Remember, I work for the bank in a lot of different cases. They hire me in a lot of things. And the one thing that is most frustrating and creates the biggest tension is lack of communication and lack of the production of records that you say you're going to give to the bank. The one thing you can do is when the bank calls, answer the phone. Answer the phone. If you don't know or are scared to deal with the bank, hire a consultant, hire a lawyer, but you have to respond. They have to consider a worst case scenario and implement procedures that they have to deal with that. And immediately they get lawyers involved and they get consultants involved and the costs go up and you have personal guarantees. So the way to deal with a bank is to, again, be proactive, have proper communication. If the bank is asking you to produce this particular accounting report and you don't know how to do it, you need to outsource that right away. You need to get your bookkeeper in to pull that trial balance or accounts payable or receivable report. And you need to make sure it's balanced properly and all that. So, you just don't be afraid to communicate with the bank because they're very helpful and they want, in a perfect world, they don't want to create a problem for you. They want to retain you as a client. But if you force them to push you out, they will. Okay? So that's number one. I think that is the best advice I can give business owners right now. And frankly, I think that I think it's the only advice the advice that I gave previously about those three items is critical,
Mm-hmm.
but if you have a bank, you have to deal with the bank. Do not ignore them. Okay?
Excellent.
I think that's the advice.
Yeah, and as a former banker, I can certainly say when it was challenging to get a hold of people, it changes their perception, your perception of them. It reduces their credibility in the bank's estimation.
Yeah.
Now you, as a banker, you start attributing motivation to things that may or may not be true. I know from where I sat, we were trying to figure out a way for their business to be okay, us to get paid, and everybody wanting to work together. But sometimes, as you said, if that communication's not in place, banks got to follow their protocols and everything kind of then goes like dominoes after that. So
you could have the exact same situation, a similar client, similar service or inventory that they're selling or whatever it is. And in one case, management communicates properly and effectively. They produce the documentation. They set expectations as to what they're looking for in terms of their future, what they want, versus somebody who doesn't communicate And I can tell you, the relationship that doesn't communicate, it's going to end quick and it's going to be expensive. The other one will not. It will work. It should work nicely. And if the business is failing, it's going to fail regardless. But communicating with the bank will for sure keep costs down.
For sure. And I remember when I was an account manager, I used to tell my clients, like, we can solve things in advance. I can help you get increases to line of credit or term loans in advance when you've got a plan. But when I come to work and you're overdrawn and I'm supposed to bounce your checks, there's not as much opportunity for a plan. So let's get together earlier, even if it's only one day earlier. That's proactive. Ideally 2 months earlier, but we'll deal with what we've got. But keep in mind that it's your credibility. And nobody's out to make your business go down. And so if that's going to be its fate, sometimes the bank intervening can help you minimize your personal losses as well. So.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Excellent. Now, before I let you go, is there any final piece of advice you want to leave the listeners who are tuning in either live or on the replay? And it might be something you've already said that you really want to reinforce and make sure they're taking in, or something brand new that you'd love to leave them with.
I think I've been practicing for 20 years, and it's the people that are proactive and understand that they don't have answers to questions, but they're looking to find answers, and they're looking to share and be transparent. Those people really get the furthest and have the best outcomes. If you're the kind of person who's going to delay and not manage a difficult situation, the result, I think, in a lot of cases is going to be worse. So pick up the phone, call Tracey, call me, and figure out, because normally if a professional is good, they'll say to you, listen, this is either something I can help you with and it's something in my wheelhouse, or it's not. Yeah. And if it's not, what they'll do is they'll refer you to somebody who can. I mean, that's just in our world, it happens all the time. So I think being proactive is the single biggest attribute to a successful problem resolution.
Excellent. And the things you listed, I was kind of chuckling inside, like proactive, communicate. When you don't have the answers, ask, be transparent. Those are actually keys to any successful relationship in your life, I think. So it goes beyond just when you've got too much debt and trying to deal with that. So before I let you go, what are you working on now? And for those who've been intrigued, who think they might want to have a chat, how can they learn more about you and the services at Albert Gelman?
So I'm dealing with now many small businesses in the service industry where they realize that their platforms are changing, where they realize that their revenues are lower than they used to be, and they need to get out of things like leases with a landlord, terminate employees that just, they don't have the revenue to cover anymore, but they still have the core business. I'm helping those clients all the time. I also deal with shareholders that are angry with each other and can't find a solution, and they think they want to break their business down, but I can come in and help to mediate a solution, and normally it works because I can see through the issues that are happening. That's really what I do all day long. People can find me on my website, albertgelman.com. It's right there. Give me a call or send me an email. We can chat.
Okay, perfect. And we'll make sure that in the comments, I'll add those links. I'll add the link for LinkedIn for you as well, so people want to reach out that way. And I thank you so much, Bryan, for joining us today. I think that, as you said, this is one of those things that when people don't have the answers, they get really anxious. They kind of shut down. They don't know what to do.
They get paranoid, worst case scenario thinking.
Yeah, taking that next step, finding someone who has the answer, somebody qualified, somebody who's seen what they've probably been going through. And most people think they're the only one. So it's kind of comforting to know that it happens to all kinds of businesses, and you can, if there's a way to solve it and find a plan, you're going to help them do that. So thank you so much. I really appreciate all your tips.
Terrific.
For those business owners, before we let you go, celebrate October being Small Business Month. take pride in what you've done. Certainly, we love to keep the conversation going. So we would love to have you join us next week for our live free training, Financial Foundations to Entrepreneurial Peace. We're going to spend an hour a day all week bringing up your financial acumen, which might help you get on the road to know how things are actually trending in your business. So you can get signed up at bizpeace.com, and we would love to have you join us. Until next time, take good care and stay financially fit.